So I want to just have fun with reading someone's chart. I haven't done this in like a long time. Was it the last one I read was Chris Evans? I don't know, just for the fun of it, and because this one person he reminds me of, like, I guess you can say that he's one of my exes. I don't know what happened to this story, but anyways, we never actually met in person, but it's like, anyways. But you know, Robert Grant Edward. There you go. I've already revealed who it is. He's cute, and he has this look that's just, yeah. But there's something else there. I kind of wanted to look at his chart, and I usually, when I do charts, by the way, I just look at it, like, I don't study it. I just see what's right there, and it's kind of, I want to kind of tap into it and want to get intuitively based on what I read from the person as well. But I don't know. He's not here, so we'll see what happens. So here's the chart of Robert Edward Grant. For those people who know who he is, it seems like all I got from it, because I don't know, I don't like to go deep into a person's profile and like their biography and all that stuff, just kind of get the gist. But based on how he talks, he comes off in public as, I guess you can say, like, there's a bit of that sort of teacher, sort of professor-y sort of feel to him. And I'm not sure if he realizes that. But then I saw his chart, it was like, oh, okay. You can see right there. What is that? 0 degrees Leo. So there's that sort of energy of that sort of fireness that might come off as a little bit aggressive, but kind of like in your face. Not really, but kind of just like, oh. There's an ego thing that comes out as well. I'm not saying that he is egoic or anything like that. He's quite aware of what's going on, right? So that's not it. It just comes off very more passionate. There's a lot of that energy, of that, the Leo energy, the whole childlikeness energy, and that's what people see him as. Although what he wants to portray is naturally Libra. He wants to portray himself as even, balanced, harmonious, you know, easy to get along with, but at the same time very diplomatic as well. You see the way he looks. He has different hairstyles sometimes. He kind of fixes his hair. At first I thought it was a Leo thing, or something like along the northern hemisphere, which is like the south here. For those who don't know, this is north and this is south in astrology. Okay. And it's that feel that I thought it was, but then no, he's I was guessing that it wasn't really any of the more outward sort of signs, typical from all the way from, well, as early as Libra all the way to Pisces, where it's not about caring about how you look, because it's more out there. I don't know if you get that feel, what I'm saying. Anyway, so that's what it looks like. He has Libra, but he also has it's funny, Narcissus conjunct his ascendant, but it's retrograde, so he probably definitely kind of doubts that, and he doesn't want to come off that. He has an ability to process, his ability to be confident in himself. That's the gift of narcissism, right? Knowing yourself, knowing your process. This time I'm going to try completely reading it without going into the charts, like, unless I really need to. Yeah. And so that's the ascendant. And you can see that as he grew up, when he was growing up, we're just looking at not the transit, but his ascendant. Is this his progress chart, actually? No, it's his natal chart. Good. Sometimes I make a mistake. So in his family, because his ascendant is Libra, his family might have been, he was probably surrounded with a lot of control. You can see here Saturn is conjunct his descendant. So his growing up, whatever his environment was, could be actual family, could be whatever family it was yet, we don't know yet, maybe we'll figure it out later, is his Aries is his descendant. So that means that there's probably like a lot of freedom oriented sort of relationship, where it's like how he was treated, or the general atmosphere of his family life, or his orientation was more about let's get this going. But because Saturn is there, it's kind of like limitations of freedom. So now he wants to, he realized as he projects himself to the world, what he packages himself to be is just like this whole, I want to be flexible, I want to be easygoing. Right. There's actually other planets here that I noticed with his ascendant, conjunct his ascendant, Kor and Ixion. So I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, Kor, Ixion. Kor is knowing the rhythm of life, going with the function, the flow of nature, and being certain of oneself, and also being kind of expansive and creative. And expansive and creative, but it's like a higher vibration of Jupiter, and has a lot to do with being open to a lot of possibilities, but also knowing that it's knowing where that it's kind of like the breath of life. That's kind of like Kor, right? If you look at the statue of Kor, I believe Kor was that Makemake. Anyway, something else. But it's in retrograde. Okay, retrograde. Plus also conjunct Ixion, which is Ixion is like bliss, but it's more than just bliss. It's like that instinctive sort of like, I know what I really what makes me truly happy, because otherwise if that gets suppressed, it becomes like fuck y'all, I'm just gonna do whatever, and it leads to crime. It leads to decisions that are very negative and kind of hurts people. And so, but in this case, it's retrograde, so he processes it naturally. Kor and Ixion tend to travel at a very, like, they tend to be conjunct a lot of times. I notice I don't know if they're ever going to be separate, right? But they seem to be, around the sun at least, heliocentrically speaking. I don't know if they're ever going to be separate. But anyways, but that in itself is opposite Saturn and Sedna. We had Sedna there. So Sedna is, the way I'm understanding Sedna now, she's the bringer of, I believe that she's the harbinger and the herald of change and cycles and things that must be regenerated through acknowledging complete acceptance that it's like, this is the way nature is, this is the way the universe works, this is the way it flows. With Saturn there, it's almost like it's creating a pullback and telling Saturn, it's like, well, you can't just show exactly, you can't just return back to, we can't just go back to, the way it was before in ancient times. Sedna brings back this whole thing. Sedna is also about symbolism and mythology, or symbolism itself, which is just imagination. Sedna is also about the portrayal the betrayal of society, of patriarchy. That is not necessarily men particularly, but like that energy of that controlling masculine sun solar sort of feel. And either one is controlling and the other one is taking you away. So both is betrayal, because one is like, I'm going to take you where you're supposed to be taken, but I don't know, I'm not going to tell you where it is, or it's just, I'm going to take you away from comfort, I'm going to take you away from that. Both have taken comfort away from Sedna, her father, and there's this raven who raven? Was it a raven? Who dressed up as, not dressed up, like cloaked themselves as a human, man. So, but took her away from the family, or at least wanted trying to take her away, because she also has a rebellious streak to her. So, but that's because she wants to live in freedom. So Sedna is a higher vibration of Ceres. And so that means that it's really absolute trust in nature. Like, if you look at Sedna now, what's coming through is the earthquakes are becoming more, there's more earthquakes, there's more flooding, there's more hurricanes, storms, tornadoes, volcano eruptions, all those kind of things, because we've lost the balance. That's Sedna. Sedna is reminding us, it's like end of this patriarchy. it's an end and the beginning of cycles. Sedna is representing like what needs to come back up. What it's like that whole what goes up must come down. That's basically Sedna. At least that's the way I understand it. And so I believe that with his family, it feels like there was a lot of like cycles of slow, super slow changes, but there was a lot of rules imposed towards that. So probably like a lot of control, a lot of, but there were shifts as well happening. So probably now his family is like a little bit more open. You know, his transiting Sedna right now is already in Gemini, or rather is going back and forth. Right now I believe it's in retrograde in Taurus. I'm not really sure, but it's now entering Gemini. It's kind of back and forth. Sedna is also about regeneration in a way, like restoration plus regeneration, because it's bringing back things that was lost. The lost and found kind of thing, right? So opposing that with Core Ixion, it's almost like how he wants to portray himself to the world is probably, or has probably been, I would say, like he wants to be certain that that's what it is, because it was uncertain before, you know, in his family. Like he wasn't, there was a lot of control. He didn't know where he was going. But this time it's more like, well, I want to be different this time. Right? There's opposing factors here. Sedna, Saturn, in a Earth element in Taurus is very stubborn. It's the most stubborn sign in the zodiac. Opposite of the transformational power moving sort of energy of water of Scorpio. So Core and Ixion there wants to just be like, I want to be my fucking self and like fuck you thing, you know. And so it's, I don't know, eventually he would have had to come to terms with both sides and both energies and say, okay, well, how can I embrace the limits of life? How can I embrace the limits and regain the gifts that I've learned, that I could learn from, you know, my upbringing, where, you know, and then at the same time balance it with how I want to portray myself in the world, with my own embodiment, which is the first house, which is your bodies, your general. It's also your health, right? He wants to be free. He wants to explore all that stuff, especially because it shows why he likes esoteric stuff, but at the same time with math. There's something about that. Scorpio is both logical and emotional at the same time, so it's all about strategy. But yeah, it's not like a Gemini or Virgo thing where it's just like, it's logic. Scorpio is strategy because it knows and sees beyond the veil, right? It pushes back beyond that and just like, okay, I see what's behind the screen, sort of, right? So it's a very Scorpio energy. What else? It's square his midheaven. So his midheaven, core Ixion square is midheaven. So there's a T-square, as you can see right there. That means he must have had issues with public, and I saw in this other chart right here, he has Arachnia, similar to mine. He has Arachnia conjunct his midheaven. So I had this feeling that I was like, I should choose Arachne. Arachne is the gifts that we have, the talents that we have that people get jealous of. It's the part of us that wants to acknowledge our own inner strength and power, even though it hurts, or maybe hurts or causes triggers in others. It's kind of a shadow thing, right? And Arachne knows has these skills that are interconnected in weaving together. See, Arachne won this weaving contest or weaving battle with Athena, but Athena turned her into a spider. She's technically like the first spider, right? With conjunct midheaven, it's like he's probably triggered a lot of people, that more likely that kind of like, you know, because he's kind of that way, like he kind of draws in people. It is Leo, So he kind of is attractive. Like, I mean, that's why I was like looking at him, like, oh yeah, there's a magnetism about him. So you look drawn to him. His smile, his dimples, right? There's something about it because he also has ascendant in Libra, so he's naturally going to look beautiful, right? He has this natural look to him. What else was there? Is that an intercepted sign? Libra is intercepted, so his 12th house is intercepted. So that makes his house 6. Is that? Wait, hold on. Is that what it is? No, it's not that. It's not an intercepted sign. I'm trying to remember which one is intercepted. If it's intercepted, that means let me check this out. So an intercepted sign is the opposite. Is that the one? Yeah, no, it's not intercepted house. Okay. Okay, good. I'm not going to go through that. Okay, so actually his third house and therefore his ninth house are intercepted because they're intercepted Capricorn, intercepted Cancer. Based on this chart, it means that it's he had a lot of issues probably with he wasn't able to come out with the way he would communicate when he was younger. There's a lot of limits to it, especially with Capricorn being there. Therefore, he didn't know how to really learn. He had probably like issues with learning. There was a lot of delay behind it as well. It's almost like retrograde, sort of. And there's just like it didn't come out till later in life. Cancer is also there, so that means his higher education was probably there was a lot of like blocks, and he probably didn't know how to work with that and didn't know how to express it, especially through Cancer. So family, career-wise was very much blocked. Career is pertaining to both Cancer and Capricorn. They're both career oriented. When I say career, I mean like Cancer is more like, because it rules the 4th house, it's inner reputation, whereas Capricorn is outer reputation. They're both very similar that way. Let's see if there's any. Aha, there was. Oh, actually, this is progression chart. This is natal chart. Oh, okay. So we do have. There's another chart here. Juno, pallas-athena conjunction to pallas-athena conjunction retrograde typically means first, when you have these two together, I feel like they're more about being committed to one's own logic and processing and imagination. It's intelligence with logic, but also creativity. It's a part of us that understands the higher wisdom of things, that we should be able to be beyond war, beyond fighting things for what you want. Right? It's I believe it's associated with Sagittarius. So a lot of wisdom related stuff. Pallas-athena is also, it's just the urge to find wisdom in your inner self. It's like inner wisdom. Well, Juno is more about loyalty, commitment, devotion, and being committed to that. So he probably had to work hard, and he was probably very uncertain about that. He didn't know where to go, how to find all that stuff, but he was more of like an inner processing. So he's probably quite like himself when it came to studying and comes to learning. Plus also Orcus is right there. Orcus is opposite of Juno. It says Juno here. It says Juno here. So I would probably still include Pallas-athena opposite Orcus, but that's not what it says here. So Orcus opposite of Juno means that his higher education was figuring out what he needs to be honest about. Like, what is it that I really need to do? What is my own personal beliefs? What are my dreams? What are my goals and aspirations? Where am I headed? And that in itself actually affected how he kind of brought it himself to the world and kind of broadcasted as his own skills and abilities. because he was, the moment he became honest with it, he came to terms with, like, if I just commit to this and learn how I can be honest with the fact that, oh, maybe I just have these limitations, that's okay. Especially have limitations through Capricorn, right? Saturn here rules Juno, pallas-athena, so therefore it's kind of, you look at it where Saturn was in Taurus, so he had to look at practical ways to learn, to actually grow, and also even relate with his siblings. There's a lot of probably insecurities or awkwardness with how he related with his siblings, but he's still there. He's still very there. He was committed. He's able to connect with them, and he learned wisdom through that because he just stuck with it. He just, like, okay, I'm gonna stick with this. And Orcus is guiding that, is pulling it forward into the sky and saying, okay, as long as you're honest with that, you'll know where you're headed. All right, so Orcus is about integrity. That's basically the key thing about Orcus. Otherwise, it comes biting you back in your fucking ass. Okay. And what rules Orcus is the moon here. Moon was in Gemini, which comes to where we are today. It's like Gemini moon people really enjoy, like, knowledge, games, anything to do with knowledge, communication, relating, transmission of things. He probably enjoyed a bit of language as well. And that's just a general thing. I mean, we're not even talking about the whole process here yet. But I just want to kind of, like, it's ruling that. So there's a lot of, his higher education had to do with being honest with what he really wanted. So a lot of Gemini stuff, so that means a lot of, like, learning, teaching, and also he wasn't later a teacher, so to speak, until later in life. Most of course, because it's 9th house, right? So his career was heading towards that direction. That is, his higher education, the way he needed to learn, what he needed to learn, how he needed to learn, was more in a very Gemini way. And Gemini actually is the cusp of his, it rules, so rather Mercury rules his 9th house, just as Jupiter rules his 3rd house. Where is Jupiter here? Jupiter conjunct Pluto, conjunct Uranus, all retrograde. Love that. So it's but Jupiter here is specifically retrograde in Virgo, so it's very technical. He has a similar placement like I do. Like, Jupiter in Virgo is very ambitious but, like, quiet. Look at the little bits of things, and there's a bit of, like, this. So it's pedantic and looks at the details of things because it wants things to be perfect. That's the only way it can expand. It's actually in a detrimental sign. It's not in Pisces. So Pisces is an exaltation. Oh, that's not detriment. It's in a fall. It's in its fall. So that means that when Jupiter is in its fall, which is Virgo, it doesn't know how to work with expansion. It has to kind of pick at things, nitpicking, right? And that's what he did, I would say, it shows up here. But because it's retrograde, he kind of nitpicked at things kind of in a very uncertain way. So he nitpicked within, kind of like wondering, how do I grow? I don't know if I'm learning anything. I don't know if I'm going any further than this. I don't know if I'm... So he kind of does that. And he kind of still probably a little bit. As you get older, you get wiser, of course, right? That's why I got the progression chart. So, but it's conjunct Pluto and it's conjunct Uranus. So a lot of the change and transformation coming through, but it's internal, sudden changes, internal, unexpected changes. Like, oh, it gets like, oh, there's a wisdom that comes through. It's in Libra. So it's more about harmonious changes, I would say. At the same time, it's more about pertaining to, maybe if anything, maybe it might be triggered by relationships, I'm not sure. Jupiter here is also in the last critical degrees. So that means that Jupiter is, if there's a push towards ambition, towards growing, towards expansion, towards feeling like I need to feel good, so I need to pick at things, right? That's a general thing about the whole thing. Square that with Mars, and it's sort of, oh no, that's Pluto Mars, okay. So Jupiter was in Virgo, so that gives a very technical aspect to his learning style. which is the third house. The cusp of the third house is Sagittarius, so Jupiter rules that. So therefore, it's very technical. You can see what he does. He's like, what is it? Not just mathematics. It's something geometric math or something like that. But it's math with philosophy with esotericism, sort of. That's the way I get it. It's not those specific things. He will correct me if he were here. He'd be like, this is that. I get it. Okay, and that's the Virgo coming through. It's opposite both. So you have two. You have the conjunction of Jupiter with Uranus. Opposite. One is opposing separately. Is Chiron in his 6th house, and his own North Node in his 5th house. So let's go with the 5th house first, because I like that North Node thing. It's in the last degrees of Pisces, a very transitionary sign. So a lot of his destiny is towards becoming a lot less technical and more spiritual, and letting go and trusting. Right? If he's followed that, great. But out in the idealistic sort of ethereal realm of spirituality and belief, and out there in the cosmos and the universe, and release, and really just believe and trust and have faith. And that's very Pisces. So, and bringing forth the sort of the detailed, the nitpicky sort of like knowledge and structure and practicality of his past lives. His past lives is 28 degrees south node in Virgo. Last degree, so that means it's conjunct. It's actually between Uranus and Jupiter. So his south node might be like, he might get super technical because Jupiter here is expanding. Remember, it's a retrograde. It's still inner, so it's still expanding internally. And what Uranus is doing, and Uranus is also making changes toward us. So Jupiter here and Uranus are kind of working together and going. Bloop. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, but opposite that North Node, which is actually South Node, is there. So it's opposite of North Node. That means that there's a kind of pull, because when you have planets conjunct the South Node, there's a sort of a pull towards that comfort zone. Like, I'm gonna be nitpicky. I feel more at home with that. I need to get it perfect. But his journey is to kind of go into the North Node, right? Everybody's journey is towards something, the unknown. So it's probably slowly getting there. He's probably slowly getting there. I'm not sure. Okay, from what I see, he's kind of getting there. So he's kind of learned that he has to balance that. The other part here is that he has this opposition to his Chiron. So that means he has to work with any sort of health issues, probably. And Chiron is right smack, and it also rules Virgo, but it's in Aries. So Chiron in Aries is similar to what we have today, but it's in the earlier degrees. So it's very much, because it's in Aries and it's in earlier degrees. Usually it's in 1 degree where it's really strong, because especially in a cardinal sign, or specifically Aries, but usually a cardinal sign. That's what I remember. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. And it's really about the freedom that he had to have. Like in this case, freedom from being able to decide how he should look at his own health and his own perspective. And when he was a kid, he's probably like, I think before late teens probably, he was probably like concerned about his freedom, but he didn't have that, especially his surrounding family, like his Saturn, Sedna, right there, specifically Saturn, in his descendant. Right, so he's had that concern about like, I don't have things that I want to do, I'm not feeling free here. And so there's a concern. It's a wounding. It's very concerned, like, I can't be myself. I can't be who I am. And so that kind of affected his health. I don't know what Chiron rules yet. I don't remember, but medically speaking, like medical astrology, I don't know. But I believe it's something to do with, but because it's Aries, it's headaches. It's up here. So he's probably felt headaches when he was younger because he couldn't be free to be himself. He couldn't speak out what he wanted to say. He couldn't just say whatever the fuck he wanted, right? And opposite that of that technicality thing, his freedom comes from being able to just be technical, just be perfect in the way he saw it. Not necessarily actual perfect, but there's no such thing, right? But grow and expand in that, ever-changing perfection, ever-changing technicality of things through science. This is also, but the little things. He probably, I don't know, maybe when he was young, he probably enjoyed a little bit of anything with micro, anything small, anything, but definitely science stuff, science related. Inventions, probably he tinkered away at inventions, I'm not really sure. But something to do with probably electricity, anything to do with electricity, gadgets. Jupiter also rules, what does Jupiter rule? I totally forgot. See, there's little things that, you learn on the way. Anyways, so that's what it is. That's what I see here. But we also have the conjunct of Pluto there. So he had to learn to that powerlessness of, that he needs to process his own personal inner expansibility and also natural change inside that he learns from that. And Pluto is going, you're going to work on this by yourself. You're going to have to work through these challenges alone, except you're not going to be alone. You have your guides, you have everything else. You just have to trust that you work through this. And it was probably very dark for him that he didn't know how to work with this sort of like this desire to, especially with his colleagues or people who he worked with or people in his community, or until probably till today, he's probably experiencing that. He has questions about, freedom. But again, everybody changes. We're going to look into the progression chart. But Pluto here is square is Mars. Mars was, his anger was probably an issue for him. He didn't know how to be angry. He didn't know how to express. He probably had explosive moments that were just like, yeah, and he probably didn't know how to commit to his own transformation because he had Mars there opposite Vesta. Mars opposite Vesta and Mercury, so he didn't know how to probably process his, that's Mercury in retrograde, so he didn't know how to communicate really well. He's had to transform through that. So you have Vesta, Mercury is the center point here because you have Mercury between Moon and Vesta. So his logical communicative self was more internalized, and so he didn't know how to communicate that well, except the fact that his emotions were involved in the whole process, and to analyze it, probably but also at the same time be flexible with it, but at the same time also be committed to that. So he's had to learn to devote himself through that. It was important to him. It was sacred for him to communicate what he wanted to communicate, but not until he felt really comfortable with it. He has Moon in conjunct Mercury, right? And this is all revolving around Gemini. So it's all about the flexibility and adaptability and not taking for granted what, his natural abilities can be. So it's kind of just growing, and which ties in with his third house. Anytime you have a third house placement, any sort of third house thing, it's really about taking for granted skills. And right, so here Mercury rules Gemini. It's right at home in Gemini, but it also rules his ninth house, which comes back to the whole, how was he able to express his philosophy? Well, through transformation first. He had to transform first. He really had to go through deep emotional transformation, deep devotional, sacred place kind of transformation, and probably a lot of times being by himself, probably. Remember that language is a language of probability, okay, not absolutes. And he had to work through that and dealing with his own internal rage and anger. But it's not like it's just explosive anger, but sort of short-lived because it's in Sagittarius. So he's probably had to deal with that self-worth and what he considered like a sense of freedom and what he valued as freedom. He has had to probably personally go through doing things that kept him active. He probably got into certain type of sports, most likely. Any sort of like probably even foreign things, talking with people outside of his community, foreign people, maybe getting to languages. So it's very technical. Mars, because Jupiter is in Virgo, it rules his Mars. So just like me, it's very much like into technical things rather than actual sports. It's more technical, but he can get into a little bit more technical sports. So anything kind of sports that's very technical. A lot of sports aren't technical anyways, especially if you look at it and you like nitpick at it, like a lot of it is. Depends on really like what he probably enjoys. He has Sun in Taurus, so he's very stubborn. So he's probably like into the earthy type of sports. Probably he enjoys that. But we look more into Venus because Venus rules the second house. Venus was in Aries, so he probably got into like a sports that was very aggressive, maybe like extreme sports. He probably has tried that. I'm not really sure. Okay, but it kind of has affected his health and how he would release all that, right? He has Eris conjunct his Venus, so he's very much like likes to test where things are going. He also likes to test if he can attract people to, especially in the workplace. This is more like whenever he did voluntary stuff or anything sort of service related. This is the 6th house, but also health. That kind of tested his own ability to heal. Probably he got into different types of medicine related to sports as well, possibly because Venus is the natural ruler of the 2nd house. However, what rules his 2nd house is not Venus. His Pluto is ruling that, but Pluto was in Virgo. So again, it gets back into the technical of things, the science stuff. So, but we have Pluto, we have Neptune conjunct the cusp of his 2nd house. Neptune in retrograde here is again doubting your own things, but it's more about the truth, doubting your own, like what is my purpose in life. He's kind of had to doubt that and had to look inwards, opposite of the sun. So his own vitality was, he had to question like, where do I go with this? I just want things to be, what makes me happy and shine is like the simple things in life, drinking, food, there's like good clothes, good life, and all that stuff. Especially when he was younger, that's what he believed probably. As he started getting older, illusions of ideal and his personal identity were put into question. Because he kind of questioned that all the time. It's like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? I want something more than just this. I want something more than just earthly things. So he had to balance that and like go with, okay, I'm here on earth. How do I make this about purpose and idealism out there and the magic and illusions of Neptune? Because Neptune is not just illusions. Neptune creates those illusions and delusions and the veil of, it's like seduction. In a way, it's kind of like seduction, charm, really. So that when we get sick and tired of it, when we get into certain addictions, we get tired of it and it's like, this is what you wanted? Go ahead. Neptune is a pacifist energy. So when you let things happen and you just kind of let things, so he probably had to question what kind of, recreational drugs he had to go through. So because he was kind of questioning his self-worth and questioning his identity, right? But apparently, because this is just an opposition, he probably just didn't really go through that as much. Although, he might have made certain decisions in the privacy of his own home, wherever his private life is. His fullest is square Neptune. So any decisions he's had to make that was quite extreme, probably did change all that, right? So it's like, oh. Especially with Mars ruling his 6th house, Mars is in the 2nd house, is about self-worth. his unconsciousness about his unconscious experience when he was unconscious or not awakened in his daily life in doing things. He has had to have had this awakening because both Mars and Neptune are in his second house. It's like both can be unconscious, but it's the retrograde is good because he had to process inwards. And when you look inwards, what happens is that you start to become aware of those things a lot more faster than non-retrograde. So retrograde, I find, is very healing, it's very positive, but it takes a while. What else was there? So the Pholus thing is definitely there. He's also had Pholus and questioning his decision in terms of his private life and his home, because his DNA is where it comes from, his family, his origins, his ancestry, kind of put into question. It's like, what is my purpose, and at the same time, what decisions can I make so that I make the right ones? Pholus here is in Aquarius, so he's had to question it and very be technical about it. Probably even take risks and go extreme and be like a mad scientist, so to speak, about things, and be innovative as well. So he's had to kind of pick and choose, right? A lot of things are showing that he has a lot of science behind him. That's why he's in this. That's why he has this record of the way what he does. Science, math, all of that stuff. What else? This is still general. Okay, I'm not going into much details here. He has what else is there? Make. Okay, let's take a look at his trine of his moon's Mercury Vesta. We already talked about that. His devotion to what he finds sacred, to be able to transform his emotions and really work through that in a very logical way and very kind of grounded, practical knowledge kind of way, using knowledge to transform his own emotions and really, still feel through it, but very air-like up here, right? But it's trying his series in Aquarius. So he's naturally able to fend for himself in a very unique kind of way, in a very eccentric even kind of way, in a positively eccentric way. Because Ceres is opposite Make. So he's probably he has a lot of wit when it comes to his role in society. His reputation, his ego was always about getting things, being able to say the right things right away. It comes naturally, but it's in Leo, so what happens is a lot of it is tied to like intuitiveness as well. Probably like he's able to intuit his wit. It's ruled by the sun. It grounds it a lot more through earthly things, so very simple things. Like this is why when he talks about his whole thing that he does now, it's like esoteric stuff, is still very earth-based. I noticed that's what I sense. He's like very much into what's already here on earth. He's not really lofty out there. And he's not very much into the intuitive powers of fire. It's grounded by Taurus. Taurus is a more, I wouldn't say potent, but it grounds Leo, right? So Sun right here, Sun rules his Make, so his wit comes through. It's a higher vibration of Uranus, so it's very innovative. It's very like it just knows it's very fast moving. Not the planet, but like not the movement of it, but it's like it knows higher intelligence knowledge. It's just that's Make. That's the general thing. I want to go deeper into it later because, yeah. Anyways, so his sun rules that. So yeah, but it's opposite his Ceres. So he's had to come to terms with probably balancing that energy of wit and using it to is a way to kind of find his career path, and so that he can take care of himself, be his own parent. And naturally he was able to have support from his mother anyways. His Ceres is trying his moon, trying Mercury and also Vesta, of course. But with the moon trine there, it's like he's most likely had this transformational, but at the same time, like maybe it seems like he was comfortable. Most of it was he's just like a friendship probably he had with his mother, in a very sort of like amicable way, as if she was like, or mother figures, any sort of woman, probably like good friends with him, right? Very sibling-like relationships, like very even, sort of equal, and naturally got nurtured for that. But at the same time, her fourth house is in Aquarius, so he was celebrated for his uniqueness. But to the world, it's almost like his uniqueness was just probably like, oh, he's very talkative, he's very smart, he's very quick to say things, but probably even very quick to conclude on things without any backing, like without any evidence. So he got questioned for that. I'm not really sure. There's a possibility that he probably got. He didn't probably feel nurtured, or there was probably no sort of unconditional relationship he had with the public, and even probably now, right? He probably gets judged for it, but he wants to be accepted for his uniqueness. He wants to be accepted. That's who he is, and sometimes, so he's had to kind of like fend for himself, and that's how he uses wit to kind of like, maybe he chooses what to say this time. His Makemake is trine Venus and Eris, so he naturally is able to test the waters and figure out the truth from relationships, especially in the workplace. 6th house and 10th house are all workplace stuff. Similar to the 2nd house, he actually has a grand trine here, so he naturally has that flow. He naturally knows how to communicate with people and relate with them, but in a very sort of like, he does that to kind of like, the Eris there is pulling it and making it sort of, again, it's to test the waters. Like, is this what you want? Are you sure about that? But in a very sort of Aries way. That's the general thing. Again, this is all still very general. There's some things that I'm missing here. But he knows how to use his anger. He knows how to be more assertive when it comes to that. Right? So there are certain things that, even though that's the case, he still probably has to transform with what he really wants to say, but transform it through himself. So when he's ready to come out and express what he wants to, he processes it through his 8th house thing. What else? So Haumea is Varuna. Haumea, Varuna, Jamaica. Every time I hear Varuna. So he's able to process his transformation naturally. And how he identifies with like creating natural limits. Varuna is a higher vibration of Saturn, but Varuna is about mastering tasks, mastering things that need to be done according to natural law. And so has a respect for natural. He identifies with that Varuna energy. It's a gentle Mars. It's really funny. It's like, gentle Mars, how does that happen? So it's kind of like not creating karma, but still following rules, following regulations and natural law. So he naturally transforms through that, but he has it square. Is it square? Oh, I'm mistaken. Okay, well, that's what it is. But he has it opposite his Neptune. Right, we talked a little bit about that earlier. But with the Varuna there, it's almost like he doesn't know where rules kind of stand sometimes, or at least when he was younger, he didn't know. So he's had to naturally find time to process that internally and transform through it. Sometimes 8th house is like privacy as well, but I would say it's less escapey than the 4th and the 12th house, because Mars is the second ruler, is the other ruler of Scorpio, right? And then rules the 8th house. So naturally, there's a bit of like aggression. There's an expression, outward sort of willpower that's expressed through the 8th house. So even though it's still processing, it processes it while it's still active, so to speak. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but that's what it is. So Haumea, let's go back to Haumea. Haumea is regenerative energy, like being in touch with our natural abilities to recuperate. It's natural recuperation, basically. In Virgo, it's being technical and knowing what kind of healthy things to put in your body. Retrograde, though, is kind of course, he's kind of had to test the waters on that one. He has a trine, though, Saturn, which means that he has had to process things based on, in this case, healthy relationships. Like, how do you regenerate through relationships with both your partnerships, any sort of partnerships he's had with your own community. Probably also, I would say, like, he has had to work through partnerships with his boss, or like people he used to work with or work for. And that in itself kind of made him realize, it's like, I must do something else that's different. Because if you look at his sun rules his 10th house, right? So sun right there, he started to realize that I'm not getting this thing where it's like, I don't want to work for anybody else. And then he realized, I need to do something else so that I have freedom. And that's in Taurus. Taurus wants money as freedom. Taurus wants to be sensual, but at the same time enjoy things, but at the same time work through what needs to be done in order to have that freedom. But if you can't have that freedom and you're working for somebody, then it's like, it doesn't feel like free. It doesn't feel like, the money feels like, oh, what? I'm not earning this myself. So Varuna is here making sure that he has that natural law thing, and he has that had to have that experience of questioning his purpose through his second house, right? Second house placements of Neptune. So it's like he's probably earlier in life he didn't know that you can make changes, that you can eventually be an entrepreneur. He is an entrepreneur, actually. So, but then he realized later on, it's like, okay, so I had to, this is not my purpose. I think once he started embracing his North Node, it started to come out. North Node is in Pisces, and Neptune rules Pisces, right? So Neptune rules his North Node. Jupiter also rules his North Node, and it's actually opposing it. So he's had to come to terms with that, looking at his past and looking at his present, or his future, rather. His path forward, rather. So Haumea there is square his Vesta. So so naturally he's had to restore and kind of step away from, maybe kind of step away a lot from like communities that didn't work for him, that were not that were not resonating with his desires to be not only free, but not only to kind of be, accepting his role as more spiritual, but at the same time still earthly. So 3D with, I don't know if that makes sense, 3D with 5D, kind of like horizontal meets vertical, Eckhart Tolle's words. So he didn't know what to do first, but then he started to realize, wait a second, if I commit myself to this transformation of working through what I know, which is the Moon, Mercury, Gemini placement, Vesta there is saying, just commit to it, stick with it, and that's okay. You have your, right? You have your guides to work with you. You have your own inner strength. Mercury there is kind of saying that he feels right at home in his 8th house. So he has had to transform a lot. He has had to go through all these transformations. And it ties in with Mercury ruling Virgo, which Mercury rules Haumea. So it's all about that logic thing, where he said he used the power of logic so that he can actually get away from these boring, useless, trivial earthly things. Instead, use the gifts of those earthly things towards his career path. He's also probably had to copy and learn from others, kind of been maybe misunderstood and kind of forgotten that it's like he can, even though he copied, you have Echo here conjunct. Arachne is also conjunct his midheaven. Niobe is also that, but Niobe is, I'm not really sure what Niobe is yet. It's something to do with excessive pride or something. So he's probably had to go through that, and eventually he's had to learn that he can accept all that stuff. Hybris, okay, Hybris is conjunct his Saturn. Heracles is also conjunct that. So, but he has had to have that willpower to embrace the limitations he's had in this sort of teacher. He became sort of teachers with probably with his family or any relationship he's had. People probably saw him, or his lovers probably saw him earlier in life. That it's like, oh, he's probably like a know-it-all kind of person. But he stood his ground. Heracles is willpower. It's like that whole, I'm going to stick with it. That's all I'm going to say about that stuff for now, because it's not in detail right now. And that way he's able to work through narcissistic tendencies that maybe he's had, but more like at least he probably wanted to show that he was very confident rather than narcissistic, because there's a link between the two, right? Confidence versus dangerous pride. I don't know if that makes sense, but the point is that he's had to learn from that, and he's had to kind of copy and mimic what people are telling him, or how people give him feedback in terms of what they see him as, and so he's had to learn through that. Okay, so his progression chart here right now is that he's definitely changed quite a lot. His sun is now Cancer, conjunct Orcus. He's very much identified with integrity, right? And being in touch with his own emotions. He's still processing it, though. It's in his eighth house, and you can see that there's like another grand trine here between Jupiter, Sun, Orcus, and North Node. That's the big one, I think, because he's now embracing his flow of life. And the flow of life for him is embracing that he needs probably time to processing. Maybe he goes through meditation. He does have Mars conjunct Neptune now, but both in Neptune is retrograde, Mars isn't. But he probably goes for it, and that's how he probably deals with his anger or any sort of frustrations maybe that he might experience. It's in 1 degree Sagittarius, and his Neptune is in the last few degrees, the critical degrees of Scorpio. So that means it's really a inward processing thing. So times a lot of reflective times, like he's meditative. He probably has a meditative room. I'm not really sure. Okay, I really don't know if it says that here. Again, reminding you that this is just a general reading. Neptune, because it's trine his Orcus sun, his identification of himself has to be really, truly honest. It's kind of like almost like Pluto, where it's like peeling away at the ego, and knowing what's true, and specifically in terms of like what he wants for him at a very deep, emotional, familiar, his DNA, it a lot ties in with this Cancer feeling. It's like that whole, he needs to process his emotions in a very profound, looking back into his past kind of way, right? So he's really saying, okay, what have you learned from your past, and how can you go through it? Orcus in Cancer is being able to be honest with what your past is and learning from that, because otherwise it'll just come back up to bite you in the ass. It's shadow work. If you don't acknowledge the past, if you don't go through it and find the gifts behind that, it's gonna bite you in the fucking ass. So, and then trine with his North Node. So North Node here, then functioning, it's actually conjunct his Nadir. So again, it's processing and knowing what to, really like embracing his path towards spirituality, specifically through, I would say, his relationship with his family, his current family. But speaking of the 4th house, because that ties in with what we were talking about here with Cancer, it rules the 4th house. Eris and Chiron are not in conjunct, but Chiron is in retrograde, so it's still in Aries, and Eris is still in Aries. That doesn't make a difference, but because it's now Mercury has moved, and Vesta as well. Mercury and Vesta are in conjunction. They have a T-square with Juno right here. So being honest with the way he communicates now and sticking with that, being devoted to being emotionally true in what needs to be said. It's no longer in retrograde, right? Whereas Mercury was in retrograde, now it's not. And it's in Cancer now, was in Mercury. So now he's able to emotionally process things and sense things. He's a lot more than just typical logic. He's more intuitive now, he's more instinctive. And opposite that of Juno, which was still in Capricorn. And both are committing, is forcing him to, it's kind of getting him to commit to that and be devoted to his own well-being, his own personal health and well-being and overall image, or I would say his first house, with how he relates with people, and really like kind of just sense it first before speaking your mind right away, because he had to process that before. Now it's a little different, and that way he can work through those the freedom he wanted, so that he realizes it's like, okay, well now this is kind of a different freedom for you. It's no longer just saying what you want, but in this case your freedom will come through acknowledging how you express yourself and how you become more independent through being committed to what you do. When you stick to your guns, when you stick to what you know, stick to and just go with it step by step, step by step, step by step, right? And Mercury rules here. Let's go back here. Mercury rules his 10th house. So here we have the way he's relating with people and how he's devoting himself to that, and creating that sacred space for himself, and also being a sacred space for him now is with relationships. The 7th house, his sort of contract, any sort of like commitment, any partnerships he's had, any agreements as well. That ties into how his career is now being clearer. It's become clear. You see, there's no more retrograde Jupiter, Uranus, and there's no more retrograde Pluto. So it's a little clearer now. It's more out in the open. He can now work through it in a very profound, meaningful, deep, profound way. That's Pluto right there, and expand and embrace the natural changes that come through, especially through relationships. Venus versus Venus. Venus is now in Mercury. Venus rules his Uranus. But now Venus is in Mercury, so he's now even more flexible when he relates with people, especially in the workplace, or in this case his career, his team probably. And it's conjunct Varuna, so he's now a little bit more aware of natural things that need to happen, how to relate with others. Opposite that, his Neptune, Mars. So again, this conjunction of Venus and Varuna is opposite. One is opposite Neptune, and the other one is opposite Mars. This little placement here is a little weird because I'm not sure how to analyze this. Okay, both are going the opposite. Well, all of it, they're all affecting each other basically. So he has to work with the what he believes it to be, and processes it through meditation, through sort of isolation if he needs to. Reflection, any sort of reflective process, but more effective in a way that is more through his body. It's more physical. So he probably does a lot of things like, it's not up here, it's down there. It's Mars, right? So if you, let's say, for example, whatever things that he needs to accomplish in the workplace, or people that he works with, or any sort of daily task he needs to accomplish, can we work through when he reflects on it in a physical way? Could be doing things like yoga. He could be doing things like any sort of sports activities that's more meditative in the process. Anything more physical. So his Pluto, Jupiter, Uranus is square his pallas-athena, which is still in retrograde. And this is his progression chart now, by the way. So here he's still questioning his role, as like the wisdom he gets from being himself, and regaining and attaining that freedom to be just himself and be kind of like a leader is still squaring his role in the public. So his role and reputation public are kind of expanding and changing always. Pluto here is conjunct his 10th, his midheaven, so it's more affecting his 10th house than it is his 9th house. It does still go through though. His philosophy comes through, his beliefs and sort of his system into the 10th house and how he projects that onto the world and how the world sees him. So, but it is square his pallas-athena, so how he learns from that is probably that he probably still questions that, where people probably might miss, like, I don't know, or probably he is not seeing it, or rather he's probably questioning his role. So there's part of himself that is kind of like, I don't know what kind of wisdom I'm getting from this, but he's still learning from it by going through it and just keep going through it. It is pallas-athena is in the last and critical degrees of Sagittarius, so that means it's about to transition to a more assertive sign, which is Capricorn. But what that also means is that because it's critical degrees, he sort of had this sort of feels a rush of like, I'm doubting. Where's my connection? Right? So I don't know if the wording is right here, but that's the way I'm putting it now because I'm not doing this in detail. His moon, we forgot about his moon. Moon is still in Mercury. It's gone through several changes, of course. Of course, the moon is always there. He's always going to try. So we all go through tons and tons of returns, like lunar returns. So there really isn't, you can say there's a lunar return, but it's still in Mercury, is the way it was. It's very technical. Opposite of his ascendant. So now his relationship with people a little bit more technical. He probably gets his environment, his new upbringing, so to speak, is becoming more technical, but he wants to appear more philosophical, and there's a lot of genius behind him, but it's more, what he's probably sensing is that people are just going to him for knowledge, but what he wants to do is, show to the world, this is how I'm packaging it, this is what I want to show you, that, I know more than just simple knowledge, and he's working through that. Because it is opposite his ascendant is square his Haumea, and this is his progression chart. So he naturally has to process his own philosophy and what he thinks about it, right? It really ties into that, his 9th house too, because Sagittarius rules the 9th house. What is this one? What else? Okay, so we do have Make opposite his series. It's still in the same placement, but different houses this time. So now his ability to be witty or like quick knowledge and being able to process, not like thought, higher intelligence, is more of an internal process for him. So that way he can transform through that while being able to nurture himself through a more, I would say, because his series in retrograde is in Aquarius, he looks for different ways to be unique, and that's his uniqueness is what he feels is like his nurturing abilities, right? He actually nurtures the world through providing this kind of unique brand of things, like, whether it's science or pseudoscience stuff, but it's like high intelligence out there kind of information. That's how he finds. Now he wants to nurture the world instead of nurturing just regular people. Well, I mean, he doesn't. It's not just typical nurturing, like, or how the way he expresses unconditional love to people, and that's part of his self-worth now, is through that Aquarian model, which is, I'm going to help you by giving you freedom, basically. Be yourself, right? Be who you are. But it's in retrograde, so it feels like it's more like does he give it to himself or does he give it to others? So it's a question of nurturing. So does he become the parent or the child? When you have series in retrograde, it feels like, for me at least, it feels like it's like a split. It's almost like, I want to nurture, I want to help the world and give unconditional love, but how can I give it if I'm not helping myself? So there you go. So that's where it becomes like his make is more like he needs to find ways to intuit and analyze it through his own identity, like his current identity. In this case, it's a processing of his sun, which is in Cancer. So now it's becoming more emotional. He's more tied to the emotional things, intuition, instinct, and emotions. He's more tied to that rather than just pure logic. That's his progression chart right now. Let's look at his transits. I didn't go through the other, what do you call this? The other asteroids, because I feel like maybe we don't need to. The Echo one was interesting because I wanted to do that. There is, his general talent is in his ability to make money, naturally. The other general things, his fame is in his ability to transform things, his transform information. And you can see here, industry is in transformative, occult, sort of these things. You can see it's in his eighth house. Urania. Okay, so so his ability for astronomy, he was probably one of the things he's probably had trouble with, or still has trouble with. It's part of identity because it's a little too technical, or maybe it's kind of, I don't know, maybe it's part of his process, but he doesn't know what to do with it. It's tied to, is it tied to Coronas? No, it's not. But it is in the last degrees of Leo, so that means Uranian Leo is this ability to have cosmic sort of connection intelligence, but in this case through his identity, but also his angelic connections. I don't know if but because he's questioning that, because he wants to be more, his sun wants to be more grounded, right? Typically. Like I said earlier, like I said, the progression chart, it has moved to Cancer, but it's still Taurus. So that means he's very earth-based, right? So with Urania there squaring his sun, and it's actually T-squared to his Neptune talent, it's almost like he's had to question his talent with the ability for astronomy, math, science, even astrology itself, technical things, particularly with the sciences and math, and how he can attain knowledge and wisdom, which is even higher intelligence and wisdom through those things. It's not really wisdom, but yeah, kind of. Okay, like a further connection, because he's very much stuck in the earth, but it's like, no, I want to release. His north node is pulling him and pushing him towards, higher altitudes, let's call it that way. Okay, so but his hidden talents are in the technicality of things. It's in 14 degrees Virgo. So but I'm pretty sure he's kind of discovered that. I mean, it is 14 degrees 14 what is that, 14 degrees Coronas, so at 14 degrees Virgo, which actually is square his Mercury. And I think that's kind of like he's had to process that, whether he's to transform through that. Like he has this fame for him, means that he can transform people, like his own personal, I wouldn't say emotions, but like information, right? So his fame is in his information, how he's giving knowledge to people. I'm sorry, I'm gassy. And it's like it's almost, it's not in perfect conjunction with his Mercury, but yeah, so his ability to communicate, but he still has to process that, but because it's in House of Transformation. But at the same time, as he processes that, it's through anything that's occult and esoteric, that kind of stuff, anything taboo, he's able to go through that, and that's part of his industry. But it's square Coronas. That means he's had to kind of figure out what it is his hidden talents were in the first place. So what are all those things? And that's to be technical, right? And that's why he's doing what he's doing now. Perdix, I also wanted to look at that one because Perdix is in conjunction. It's in a stellium with Pluto, and this is in his birth chart with Pluto and Jupiter, and also Uranus by extension, and abundance. So it's all in his 11th house. So that means his ability to be technical is also, it's right there. Perdix is all about technical abilities. I'm not going to go much into that anymore. Let's take a look. This is, yeah, his natal chart right here. Okay, let's go back to this one. So right now, whatever he's experiencing, there's a bunch of changes in his relationships. The moon is conjunct his Saturn right now, so it's kind of bringing in, kind of softening his experience, like his past. Maybe his experiences with the past, kind of bringing in memories, probably from his, and he's had to probably, I don't know. Echo is conjunct the moon right now, so for him, it's transiting his 7th house. That means he's probably experiencing, like he's had to. There are things that he just has to copy and kind of learn from because maybe he doesn't know certain things, particularly with relationships. Maybe he's not. Saturn is in his 7th house. We even look at it. Hybris is right there, so he's probably felt like he's didn't need those relationships or need certain partnerships because it's like I can just stand on my own. But then now he's probably being reminded to kind of say, well, you need to work with people, and you kind of just follow their lead this time instead of you just leading this time, right? Lucifer is also there, so it's something to do with, it's tied into, it's a little different from Hybris, and it's different from Narcissus. So I chose that because I kind of wanted to see a little bit for myself what that meant. So, because I sensed something there. There's something about pride that I was seeing, the way he communicated. I can see it. I saw it. I was like, there's something there. So, and I was right. Narcissus is conjunct his ascendant. But with the moon there, it's telling him to kind of be open to the opportunity of addressing your own personal connection with people in general, because it is about transit, and also your emotionals and your past as well. Any sort of habits, what you really enjoy, and kind of like, how do you enjoy relationships? What makes you happy? What makes you feel at home? Instead of just being like, typical like Saturn placement in his ascendant, in his descendant. It's like, well, no, soften. Moon is like going, let's shed a light into this one and say, what is the issue here? Maybe he hasn't been able to deal with it yet. I don't know. His Heracles, I forgot here. Astra, what is this? Astraea is moral code. So he's like mine. He's very much serious about his health as well. I see it, okay. His health and how he portrays it to the world. But he's kind of like, moral code, is it? Yeah, so moral code, yeah, Astraea is moral code, so he's very serious about it. But he's more serious about his freedom because it is in Aries. What else is there? And going for it as well. So right now Heracles is conjunct his Astraea, so he's learning to give more attention and like sticking with it and having the strength and just stick through it. Again, there's certain details. He probably has to go through certain things right now, like in order to have real willpower and strength, and that's probably with because it's with Aries, something to do with and it's at sixth house, so something to do with like trials he probably has to go through, because it's a test of his strength and willpower. That it's not willpower like human willpower, it's a little deeper than that. And learning how to intuit that and be more childlike and present. Aries is all about being present as well. It's a very present sign. It's very innocent, just curious about things, right? So he probably has to allow that and really like, okay, process it. His Chiron and North Node for society. This is the collective North Node. It is conjunct Chiron right now, but it's conjunct his Venus. So that means, excuse me, being able to relate with people who at the same time want the same thing as he does, which is like personal freedom, specifically being able to just do what he wants to do, and it's very technical, but at the same time, his health is also part of this one, most likely, because it is the sixth house. Lucifer is also part of that. So just being really confident and being like, just like, this is what I want. It's like, I feel like I know I have enough here, and like, let me do my thing. Really, basically, this is what it's saying. Let me do my thing. Right? Mercury is, he's learning a lot more, and things are coming up through his own experience, through his own wounding, any sort of past wounding are coming up to the surface and kind of being expressed. So he's probably expressing a lot more of that. I noticed that when he was having this, that was a December one though, was it? Or was it a recent video? But it definitely feels like he's expressing more of that, at least right now, whatever he's experiencing. Kind of creepy, eh? I'm just like, this is part of the story. Oh my god, this is what's happening. And remember, this could be a wrong chart. I don't know. This is the information that I got. It was through Facebook. I did a Google search. Was it Google search? I don't know. Whatever. I did a search. Anyways, Neptune is conjunct his North Node in Pisces, which actually illuminates it even more and gives him, like, kind of makes him question where he's going. As the Sun is going to be conjunct his North Node, his natal North Node, and so it's going to kind of make it sort of more, give him a sense of like that sort of like, that kind of push to be more like, have it can revitalize him in a certain way and kind of give him that sense of purpose and create more idealism and kind of pull it away from his South Node and be more in now with his North Node. I feel like that's what's going to happen. Saturn is also is transiting his fifth house, so serious contact with people, specifically like any romantic stuff, any sort of fun. He's probably going to be able to, or probably has to, or maybe feel like he has to have these limits and, kind of really put into ground things for himself and be practical about it and make it sort of matter of fact. And it's like anything to do with children, any sort of recreation, any sort of fun things, any romantic affairs, if he's not married, I'm not sure. Venus is transiting the cusp of his fifth house, but it's in his fourth house. So again, the relationship stuff come out, and he's probably going to experience some relationships that kind of maybe that are drawn to him, that are kind of like, he's probably, and I think that's what's happening too, because I saw it so naturally, but maybe more like in this case physically drawn, like actually drawn to him, that may come to him and it's like, I like what you do, you're very unique. And it's still, Venus right now is in Pisces, so it has that charm to it. But it's going to be in his fifth house eventually. Mars is in his fourth house. Uniqueness in there, so it's in Aquarius, so that means it's probably going to have different ideas when it comes to like physical things. I don't know, I'm not sure. It's probably going to discover rediscover things in his private life that people don't know about. Like it could be like anything from sexuality to athleticism, to any sort of activity, any sort of ideas, any sort of, not ideas, any sort of, what do you call this? Any sort of very Martian thing. It's just very like kind of get-go sort of energy. Because it's in the fourth house. Sort of like rediscover like his own assertiveness, his own initiative, and maybe become more aware of like and do something about like maybe his own personal like inheritance, ancestry, maybe his past as well. Okay, Pluto is also transiting that, so it's kind of bring in bring to the surface and kind of like stripping away what isn't true about his past, and that's coming through. And that's going to be there for a while. Pele was naturally in his seventh house, which is about the passion, fire, and all that stuff. But because his own birth, his natal Pele was in Taurus, it's more about passion towards the simplicity of life and the simple things, you know, sensuality, good things, food, drinks, maybe alcohol, maybe all those things. But Pele is transiting his third house, so it's how he's now able to maybe feel like he needs to communicate more things, a lot more than before, because it was an intercepted sign, his intercepted house. So now it's coming, like Pele is going like, release it. But there's certain consequences behind that. Pele is just also about anger, that it can destroy. So he probably has to work through that. It's 15 degrees though. Oh, okay. So it's going to be, he has to adjust to that. It's 15 degrees Antigone, which is sort of like moral code as well. It's like Astraea, but it's also going to be his own natal moon and his own natal Mercury. Pele is going to be quincunx that, so he has to adjust the way he talks and expresses in communication, what he feels is going to be the right thing to say, and be conscious of his like what he say, how he says it, because the anger might come through. But it is in Capricorn, so it's more about sticking to it, but it's not really anger, but more like creating limits and blocks, because it is Capricorn, right? So, and probably being right all the time is probably going to be a kind of a questionable thing. Like he's probably, oh, wait a second, did I just do that? Did I just limit people? Did I just thought I was right? So it's ego that comes through, right? Capricorn rules the 10th house, it's the ego. It's reputation based. Prometheus, I added in here because his whole natal Prometheus, okay, so visions through and foresight, being able to see things. It's in retrograde, so again, it kind of ties in with his Neptune. Yeah, I'm going to skip that one. So Narcissus and Hybris are in Scorpio right now, and it's transiting his first house. So a lot of issues probably might come through where he's probably going to have to process that. It's going to be quincunx his own, what is that, 15, 17? Okay, quincunx is Antigone, so he has to adjust in terms of like what he believes in and process that before he expresses it, because sometimes maybe that might come out, right? And Libra is Libra rules his first house, therefore Venus does, also Eris of course, but Venus primarily. So that means how he relates to people will be expressed through his first house. Any sort of new encounters probably, or any general thing that he says to people and how he relates with them. So he has to be careful about that one. Antigone, I don't want to read that one. Okay. I usually do these things like when I look up planets, I add asteroids just for the sake of it, like just in case, because I don't like to miss anything. And that's fine. So let's look at his other, and his entrepreneurship is in his relationship, the way he's entrepreneurship spirit. in his natal house, his natal 7th. But Uranus is, so there's probably changes in his career right now. Sudden changes, or maybe unexpected changes. Jupiter is going to enhance that by April, and it's going to add to the whole process. It's trine his, no, it's not trine anything. It's trine, what is that? Oh, okay, it's trine Perdix. Entrepreneurship with technicalities, okay. That kind of makes sense. With Pluto as well. So Perdix and Pluto there. So deep, genuine technicalities. He's naturally processing it. Maybe he doesn't know how to deal. He still doesn't know how to deal with it. But again, remember this is his birth chart, not his progression chart. But his entrepreneurship abilities are still there. It's still going to be the way it is. His birth chart, the energy of the birth chart is going to be still there. It's just enhanced with the progression chart. Right? So it's going to add to the flavor to the whole thing. What else? I think that's it for today. Let's see what the cards have in store. And it's going to be a little different, but because I am feeling, to be honest with you, I'm feeling gassy. Okay. Let's see what's in store for Mr. Robert Grant. Okay. Wow, a lot of cards want to come out. What is that? Okay. But I'm not done shuffling. Okay. I'm probably going to... Oh, this one's sticking out. I'm going to do 4 today. That one needs to stick out. I feel like I should do 4 today. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there a 4 card spread? Pretty general. Okay, let's try this one. So the first card that came up was 6 of Pentacles. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to change the screen here. Okay, so that was 6 of Pentacles. You can see right there. Second card that came up was 10 of Swords. Knight of Swords upside down. Okay. Page of Pentacles. This one came up when I was doing my chart. Okay, that's interesting. 4 of Pentacles. 4 of Pentacles. Okay, before I get into... Okay, what is this? Feels like he's probably going through something with himself and kind of keeping to himself, and it feels kind of out of place, maybe. 10 of Swords, a lot of like burden with too much, like pushing things to the limits and kind of just like really exhausted, probably really exhausted. Okay, Knight of Swords, this is the one where he's just going for it, but it's something about ignoring feelings or something like that. I don't know, Knight of Swords. And Page of Pentacles, if I remember this quickly, it's like something he has to offer or something like that. But this, based on what I'm seeing here, I feel like he has something to offer but doesn't know where it's going to head towards. Like, what is it for? Let's take a look. 4 of Pentacles. Refusing to budge, okay, believing your way is the only way. That ties in with the Antigone thing, okay, Saturn thing as well. Limiting your viewpoint, controlling others with materialism. So the Taurus thing, okay, it's mine, okay, resisting change, tight-fisted and mercenary, small-minded, penny pinching. Probably going through that. It's probably some kind of issue he's probably going through, or like a past issue thing. His Antigone was in his 8th house, so he still has to transform through that. But his progression chart doesn't have Antigone. I don't have his Antigone for his 8th house. Antigone and also Astraea are both moral codes, what you personally believe in. Okay. 10 of Swords. Okay, having enough. This is what I found. Exaggerated self-pity. Feeling life is against you. Playing the victim. Cutting through illusions. Okay, that makes sense. That he's you know, typically he has his Neptune was in, right, it was in Scorpio, so he's still probably coming to terms with the illusions of that stuff, but it's also his transit Neptune with the Sun, so it's probably having to really like process that. And yeah, it's going to be opposite his Jupiter. Okay, so, and really like it's an internal work he has to go through, and he's probably being reminded by his own community to kind of like be real about the illusions, like maybe he's right, maybe he's not right, kind of things. I don't know. Knight of Swords. Again, this is the one that I had earlier. Analyze the situation, cuts off from feeling. So, naturally, it ties in with what he does. He's very Gemini moon, okay? Mercury, Gemini moon, Vesta. But that's why his progression chart is adding more emotions to things. He's probably maybe there's a part of him that resists that. Well, it's Saturn. Okay. And Page of Pentacles. This one. Setting the wheels in motion, looking for a window of opportunity. Know your limitations. Wanting to be prosperous, financial messenger, diligent worker. That ties in with a lot of stuff. This Virgo placement there. So this is the first time you're probably hearing my stomach growl because I'm gassy right now. So that's the truth. Whatever. Okay, so that's that. I hope that was fun for you. I don't know any fans out there or any people who read about Edward Grant. That's the chart for him. So I hope that was fun for you because it was interesting for me despite the gas tube. But I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye.